All right, Marvel Monday Part 2. X2, X-Men United was released in 2003, directed by Bryan Singer once again, and starring Hugh Jackman, Halle Berry, Shawn Ashmore, Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart, whole lot of others. And, yeah, if you are new here, Marvel Mondays is a thing now on this channel. I will be reviewing every X-Men movie every Monday until Deadpool and Wolverine, and then I'll probably be moving on to other stuff. Probably the MCU is up next, but we'll get there when we get there. Either way, here is my review for X2, and a little history lesson, like I did with the first movie. Back then, this movie was considered one of the greatest comic book movies ever made, along with Spider-Man 2 even. But Spider-Man 2 didn't come out till a few years later. But regardless, for years, this was regarded as one of the greatest sequels of all time, and I still really like it. So let's go ahead and start this review off, starting off with the good. And there's a lot to really love in this movie. First of all, the acting is fantastic. You got, obviously, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. He's back. Still synonymous with the character, like I said in the first review. He's fantastic here. I love how he plays the character. I really love that we get a bit more of a deep dive into his psychosis and his amnesia, trying to figure out what his past was like. And I really liked that. And Ian McKellen as Magneto gets a lot more to do here. He gets a lot more badass scenes. He's great. Like I said, Ian McKellen, obviously one of the greatest comic book villain castings of all time as Magneto. Loved him here. Patrick Stewart as Professor Xavier, once again, fantastic. I love his little side story in the movie where he's kidnapped and he's trying to figure out what's going on. Loved it. And Halle Berry, she's very, very much improved as Storm in this movie. She gets a lot more to do than just spew one-liners. She gets some really badass action sequences. I loved her. And Anna Paquin, once again, she's great as Rogue. I don't exactly know what people think of her as Rogue, but I've always loved her as Rogue, and she's great in this movie as well. You get a couple newcomers here. First, you have Shawn Ashmore as Pyro. I really liked him in this movie. Not so much in the next movie, but I really liked his arc in this movie. Befriending Magneto and eventually running away with him at the end. I really liked him here. I thought he was a great character. Shawn Ashmore played the character very well. Really excited to see what they do with him in Deadpool and Wolverine, even though that's a very random character to be bringing back. But hey, I'm all here. I'm here for it. Then you get Brian Cox as Colonel Stryker, and he's the main villain of this movie. And Brian Cox is just a powerhouse actor. I love Brian Cox as an actor, and I really liked him in this movie. I thought he was fantastic as Stryker. He's probably the best version of Stryker we've got in the films, even though I did like Danny Huston in the later films. But I really liked Brian Cox here. He was very evil, very sinister, and I loved how he's tied to Wolverine's past, and the scenes we get between him and Wolverine later on, absolutely fantastic. And finally, I want to talk about Alan Cumming as Nightcrawler. I love this version of Nightcrawler. It's really a shame that we don't see this version of Nightcrawler ever again in the movies. But I really loved Alan Cumming as Nightcrawler. I love that he's the religious type like Nightcrawler is in the comics. And I love that he's kind of the emotional stronghold of this team in the movie, and I really liked it. And his character arc is fantastic. And a few characters that I didn't mention in the review for the first one because they were just either kind of there or didn't really do much for me. First of all, you got Famke Janssen as Jean Grey. She doesn't really do much in the first movie, but I really loved her in this movie. She's got a lot of great moments, and she's fantastic. Then you got Rebecca Romijn as Mystique. I wasn't a fan of Mystique in the first movie, although I'm not a fan of Mystique as a character in most stuff, But I thought that Mystique was really well handled here. She's got some badass action sequences, and just gotta love it. And aside from the action is ramped up from the first movie. The action in this movie is so much more crazy, more brutal. It's just better in every way than the first movie. Even though the first movie still had some great action, I just really love this movie. It's a fantastic follow up. The story is even better with Stryker kidnapping a bunch of the X-Men and then having some kind of plot to destroy all the mutants with Professor Xavier's mind. Magneto ends up having to help the X-Men. It's just a fantastic story. And also, Magneto's prison break in this movie, that is one of the best sequences in a comic book movie ever. Not just from back then, of all time, in my opinion. I love this. I love that whole sequence. And then the score is fantastic as well. And I really love the darker aspects of this movie, especially with the flashbacks to Wolverine's past and how he gets his adamantium claws. And he has a really, really kick-ass action sequence with Lady Deathstrike, whichever. The lady with the really long fingernails. I really love that whole sequence. She was a very formidable villain for Wolverine. And yeah, I love that part. And yeah, this is just a fantastic movie. Also, I can't go without saying the opening sequence in the White House with Nightcrawler, absolute best opening ever. I love that entire opening sequence. Yeah, that's about all for the good. On to the bad. And there's one thing I had to point out. I wasn't a fan of how Cyclops was kind of just sidelined in this movie. James Marsden was great in the first one, and then he's just kind of sidelined in this one. He gets it way worse in the next movie, but we'll get to that. But yeah, that's about all for the bad. On to the final thoughts. I love this movie. This is still one of the best comic book sequels of all time, in my opinion. X2, X-Men United, is a fantastic movie, a great follow-up, and one of the best sequels of all time. And I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. So that was my thoughts on X2, X-Men United. Let me know down in the comments what you thought about it if you've seen it. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.